My guest for the morning, Dr. Afriyie Akoto, Member of Parliament for Kwadaso. He's a member for the MPP as well, and thanks for joining me. You're a member of Parliament's Committee on...
I'm the ranking member for Food, Agriculture and Cocoa Affairs.
Because I see because you're a cocoa farmer as well.
Well, I'm all kinds of...
you're very much interested as far as that is concerned. And he's in the studio alongside Rashid Pelpo. He's the Minister of State of the Presidency in charge of private sector, the PPPs, etc. But he's also a member of Parliament for Wa Central. That critically is important as well. He's a member of the NDC, and thanks for joining me in the studio.
Thank you.
But, well, the reports have been rife over the last 24 to 36 hours about the appearance of the Finance Minister before Parliament. And it depends on which side of the House you're hearing the subject from, whether to brief Parliament or to present a new budget before the House. The contention is because Ghana has finally concluded negotiations with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, for some monetary support of some $940 million US, it means that at least there needs to be some breaks on what sort of expenditure that needs to be made. So far, the Bank of Ghana had indicated that the projections as far as the restriction of what the spending cuts should be within the ranges of some 6.6%, but we don't know. We're told that the last year, the deficit was in the range of some 9%. Will we be able to restrict ourselves as far as payment is concerned? And already, there's always the issue of job losses, especially in the corporate world, but also in the job market. And this has partly been attributed to the current energy crisis, but also we have the prices of the main international commodities, gold, oil, cocoa, etc., falling. And so people are currently reeling under this very stress and losing their jobs. So all these are for discussion. So I have to start with you, especially since you are with the presidency and you're representing government. Is it true that the finance minister could be briefing Parliament, and exactly on what?
Yeah, he'll be coming to Parliament and as a midterm to present a statement. So we'll be hearing the finance minister's statement in Parliament, and it's when he presents his statement that we know exactly what it will represent. Yeah, well, he has the mandate. He has a right to appear before Parliament at any time as a minister to make a statement, and that's exactly what he wants to do.
The minority had been saying, I believe the last couple of weeks, that government needed to come back to the House, especially to reassert itself as far as the budget is concerned, because we had concluded or would have concluded our negotiations with the IMF. Yeah. Now, it means that we have to restrict ourselves as far as expenditures are concerned. So that would be the reasons why the finance minister would be coming to the House.
Oh, yeah, he'll be coming to tell us about some policy statements that some policies we have introduced in the policy regime, in the economic policy regime, and what the way forward would be in managing the economy into 2016. And some of them are so crucial, you cannot just pretend that they are there. You need to appear before the House and inform them about it. And so if he comes, we'll be hearing for the first time what they are. And I believe that they will be such that, you know, it will be for the good of Ghana, because I don't think that any economic minister for economists would, finance, would want to come to the House to create problems for the people, or will any government want to create situations where the people will be unhappy. We are thinking about the good of the economy. He has found that some steps have to be taken, and some policies have to be introduced, and the way they are means that he has to appear before the representatives of the people to give a comprehensive overview of exactly what he'll be doing.
It's quite an interesting point you make, and Dr. Afriyie Akoto, just on Monday, your side of the House convened a press conference. Well, you...
No, not on Monday, please. When the budget was read last year, we said that it was dead on arrival.
Meaning what?
You see how the minister is struggling as a member of the government. You mean the finance
minister or him?
No, my friend Honorable Pepro is struggling to speculate what the minister is coming to say. Everybody knows in this country, it's an open secret, that this budget, when it was presented
in November
last year, if you remember what we said
at
the time at the press conferences and on the floor, that this budget is totally infeasible. It's not feasible because the revenue projections, there was no way they were going to attain those with all these doomsday, the business is going down. He's the minister in charge of private sector, and he knows that even Coca-Cola and all these big companies today, Tallow has just announced they're going to lay off workers. It's an economy in recession. Okay, so the finance minister is coming in with a revised budget. Let's be honest with ourselves. And that's going to happen in the next couple of hours.
Okay, let me ask you this. What really are the implications if the finance minister, whether we want to hear it from the majority side, which says it's a briefing, and you are saying it's a revised budget that is going to be presented before the House, what will be the implications on spending and that very policy on jobs and expenditure?
That's the whole point. That's the whole point.
Relevant sectors.
With or without IMF interventions, we know where this economy is going. Profligate spending and all that, where in 2 years ago the spending just went so wild off. Okay, physical indiscipline. That's what it was. So we've come to a deficit which is unmanageable. Okay, and that's what led us to go to the IMF for reliefs. The IMF have concluded there are certain things that this government should do to cut expenditure and then to see whether they can raise revenue. But where are you going to raise the revenue when businesses are down? The private sector are the people who actually provide the taxes to run this country. Governments don't do anything. They don't come in.
From the beginning of the last year, 2014, due to measures that were taken towards the latter part of 2013, we saw a tumble in the cedi. We're told between 23 and 27% by the close of the first quarter in terms of depreciation against the US dollar. And subsequently, we saw some level of stabilization between July, August, September, October. And since then, we've seen some level of, well, marginal falls, increments, etc. Do you think that all these may have contributed to the current state in which we are, coupled with, of course, the overruns?
No, there is often a background situation that triggers off all these things you are talking about. The cedi will not just start tumbling unless there's something that has triggered it off. And we've come to a situation that would require all of us to put our hands on deck, you know, to support government to be able to address the situation. We are in a very turbulent international economic situation, and oil prices are very volatile. They are coming down. It has an effect on our economy. We are paying so much for labor, which had never happened in the history of this country, where you pay about close to 60% or 70% of your total revenue to labor. Our cocoa prices at one point also came down, and gold is suffering because production has reduced, and etc. Those are the main sources of income. So if you understand what is happening to your economy, you need to adjust to make sure that you don't just run down the country. You know, he's talking about profligate spending. I don't know where he got that thing from. We have not spent. We have not spent irresponsibly. You know, we know that.
You mean prudent spending has been undertaken?
By 2009, you know, by 2008, we were spending about 2.5 billion for labor. By 2011, 2012, we were spending close to 8 billion for wage bill.
Just because of the introduction of the single spine.
Single spine, and that at that time it took 69.9% of total revenue. This will collapse. This will affect every economy, you know, adversely, and it did for our economy. Besides that, they have left with us a huge deficit, and then also a very big subsidize, when we kept subsidizing fuel, we had an accumulated subsidies that we had to cover.
And for which we had an accumulation of some 1.5 billion.
Yes, that we had to cover.
The BDC.
Plus subsidies on other utilities. So the economy was in a very tight corner. It would take a John Mahama's administration to kickstart it and keep it going. And now we are also faced with the situation of electricity. Is faced by every government. Just quite recently, the last administration suffered it greatly for 2-3 years, of the administration, because consistently we had depended on hydro energy. When Nkrumah came, he thought it was good, and that was the beginning. It was, of course, excellent. Then Pong came, Liman came with Pong,
Well, we know the history.
With Bui,
yes.
Meaning that we have not been tackling the problem, away from the seasonal challenges we face in generating hydropower.
Okay.
And we are accumulating the challenge because of the expanded nature of the economy, the increased utilization of energy. And so we have gotten to a point, it's a critical point, we need to take tough decisions to be able to repair the economy and keep it going again.
Okay. Yeah. The Bank of Ghana, in its monetary policy committee briefing the last for the last quarter, so to speak, and this was undertaken in February, said, well, fiscal consolidation was at the base or at the heart of all that we're doing as far as prudent management of the economy is concerned. Would you say, by your observation, you have seen that we have consolidated enough by spending perhaps frugally or efficiently, or we haven't prioritized the way we needed to spend?
No, we have to go back to the source. I totally disagree with my colleague here about the diagnosis he's given. This whole thing about a deficit is to be laid at their doorstep.
From 2012?
2012. We know what
the
happened.
overrun?
Of course. We are suffering from that. This do so is coming from that. We have the capacity. They don't have the money to buy the crude oil to run the capacity. At the end of the day, that's what it is. It's either gas or crude oil. In any case, his submission that cocoa prices have fallen is totally false.
No.
He says over the period.
I'm talking about what period? We are talking about, at the moment, the last 6 months, cocoa prices have been hovering around $3,000 a ton.
I started from
historically,
prices were falling.
Please, when you were talking, I was very quiet. So let's engage in a conversation. I'm very quiet when you are speaking. So give me the chance in the space to explain to the people of Ghana this morning what is actually wrong and why the Minister of Finance is coming to Parliament with a revised budget. That's what it is. He's coming today to tell us.
Well, the majority says is a briefing. So
what briefing? What's the difference between a
budget?
budget?
To the point that we even had the majority leader coming on air on various media platforms to consolidate what his opinion was.
What's the difference between a briefing and a budget?
Well, you tell me, you're a member of Parliament.
What I'm saying to you is that he's coming purely to inform the people of this country about the physical situation and the management of the deficit, which they have agreed with the IMF to cut back. Because the difference, you see, they're talking about falling crude oil prices. Of course, we spend more money importing crude than we gain from exporting crude. So the fall in price actually benefits this economy. How much are we going to spend now to import crude oil compared to last year when prices were above $100?
Well, it's true. But as far as we're concerned, because
the fundamentals are very, very clear. Nobody can be deceived into thinking that this man is coming to have a conversation with us in the Chamber of Parliament this morning. No. He's coming on a very serious issue, addressing the crisis in the economy of this country, which we are all facing. Okay? So to try to pretend that it is nothing but a briefing. What is a briefing? He's coming for a policy statement, an economic policy statement.
What could be the implications, I asked you?
The implications are very clear, that the situation that we find ourselves in, we are not going to dig ourselves out for quite some time to come. Even if they bring all the barges from Qatar and Dubai to this country, we are not going to be out, because we are talking about, there's only one element.
There are a couple coming from Turkey as well.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But what I'm saying is that the economic damage done by this 3.5 years of doomsday is going to have a very long-term impact on the economy of this country in terms of employment, in terms of fiscal revenue, private sector development, which he is in charge in the presidency, and all that. So the hardship that the people of this country are going through.
With the finance minister now coming in and following this very agreement we've had with the IMF, for beyond the subject of what we're going to get in terms of the financial assistance of $940 million US, etc., is the fiscal consolidation that we need to undertake of spending prudently. The deficit, according to what the projection is for the current year, should be around 6%. Well, last year we did around 9%. In the long term, we're projecting between 3.5% to 3%. Do you think we can meet this very measurement we've given ourselves of 6% or around 6%?
Well, I don't know why you asked that question. I can't definitely answer that. But I know that...
Because you're in government, you know what we spend. You know the promises that the president keeps giving. He's currently in Botswana. He's enumerating a number of things that will be done. He just read the State of the Nation address and told us all the things that will be done.
But I'm saying that the finance minister is coming to give a briefing to the House. Everything, I agree with him, will border on our fiscal approach, fiscal policy that is going to be undertaken in the next, from now on until 2016. And is going to address most of the challenges that we are facing and how government intends to fix them, you know. But as to whether the deficit is going to be, we are going to meet the targets or not, will depend on a lot of other factors. Sometimes you project and circumstances make it impossible for you to get through. But I believe very strongly that what the minister intends to do will definitely have a very positive consequential effect on us. Remember, we are coming from a deficit of 14% when they left office. If we are even able to make it 8%, now it's about 8-point-something% estimated. It's a good thing, you know. Under all these challenges, we're making a good headway. We're creating value. We are increasing our stock of infrastructure. You are seeing it all over, you know. In the medium term, things are good. I do admit that we are facing serious challenges, and businesses are facing serious challenges. The private sector is suffering because of the power need, which we are not meeting. But it is not just a situation you can raise your hands and throw your hands and say...
In despair. In
despair. You know, we are working towards a future which we know is very bright.
You believe the steps you're taking,
yes,
at the end of the day, between the medium to long term, is going to be very much a positive outcome on the economy?
Very, very positive.
Okay. Do you believe that, sir?
Very positive.
The steps, the strategies that have been outlined not only by the finance minister, but also communicated adequately by government's communication people across the country.
We've heard this several times, over and over again.
To you, they are rhetorics?
Of course they are just rhetoric. And we know that on the ground, the people of this country are really going through a hardship which is totally unprecedented. I mean, I don't remember the last time that people go without electricity for 3 continuous days. Come to my constituency in Kwadaso. Go to Afriyie, go to Tanoso, go to Afriyie. You know, people are very bitter because not only in terms of their living space, but also in terms of their little businesses that they run. There's nothing. Their incomes, literally their food is being taken from their mouth because of the incompetencies in the administration of our economy that we've been facing the last 6-7 years. And one has to admit it. It's not a question of submitting yourself to IMF discipline, which is going to get us out of this economy, out of this distress that we face. So those who've been thrown out of jobs in Tallow, in Coca-Cola, Guinness, and all that, if you put them together, the number is very insignificant compared to how hard people in the small businesses have been hit. The hairdressers, the mechanics, the tailors, I mean, you go to the market. Come to the Kwadaso market and come and ask the women there. When they used to sell 100 units of things a day, whatever it is, now they can hardly do 20 because demand has fallen. People don't have the money. And that's what the government should be addressing instead of this propaganda of all kinds of things, you know?
But how do you address it if you don't put in place the strategies? And now the strategies don't just get you a positive outcome within a quarter. It takes you perhaps a quarter of 2, 3, or even a year, or even a year and a half and two.
Oh, more than that. The damage in this economy.
So do you agree that as a country we need to embrace the state in which we are and believe that the steps that are being taken positively could...
My position is that we needn't be in this situation.
Sure, but it's happened.
Given the endowment that we have, it's mismanagement which has led us to this position. And I don't think those who created this mismanagement have the capacity to correct it within the space of a year or two. I don't think so.
I think that, you know, this thing that is happening is as a result of some accumulated inefficiency that we got from the MPP administration.
That's very nice.
And it is true. You know, for 8 years.
For 6 years.
For 8 years.
Someone would say that's politics. That's pure politics.
You know, my problem is that
shifting the blame.
My problem
6
is that
years in power.
the propaganda aspect is what they do now. We are talking about an economy. He's appealing to
his public
hairdressers, barbers, and you know. So he's taking
that they are better alternatives.
Yeah, what it is that he's addressing them, playing to the gallery. But the situation is something that we need to tackle, devoid of political coloration.
How did we arrive here?
So that we can understand. When we are talking about the economy, it's the economy. But what I'm saying is that I told you earlier on that when they came and the power, when they came for all the 8 years, they added 80 megawatts to the power generation.
Oh, now we're back to that.
Yes, but let me explain why I'm going there.
Why there's a problem to solve.
That 80 megawatts was from the joint effort of the mining companies who thought that, look, the Dumso was too much, so they needed to have something to take care of themselves. Apart from that, all the machines they bought never were installed. For 8 years, they didn't add a megawatt to the power situation. So that 8 many years plus the situation we are facing now, as soon as we took over, the expansion of the economy took place, increasing needs for electricity power, forced us to now look for solutions. We don't want to take half measures. We don't want to go in for measures that...
We want to fix the problem
as a president, fix it.
Not manage it.
And it will happen. When it does happen, what you would see is that this administration will be the highest... you know, it will deliver power the highest ever in this country.
A former finance minister, Dr. Akoto, was saying, I believe his namesake, is being quoted across the media this morning as saying government is risking the reputation of the country by playing games with the economy.
They are playing games with the economy, indeed. Because when we are making efforts...
You are the one in office. And you are handling the economy.
We are handling the economy.
And they are playing games?
Yeah, they are playing games with it. Because instead of looking at the effort we are making and the reality of the situation, and putting all hands on deck to help us, because opposition... Yeah, of course.
To help you.
To help create the situation where everybody can be happy with an economy, they are distracting it. Opposition does not mean distraction. That's what I mean. Opposition means constructive opposition. When you do constructive opposition, you are helping to create value. You are helping the government to move. That's what I mean.
Okay.
So rather than doing that, every single opportunity they have, they want to distract people from...
I have on the line Dr. John Gachi. He's a lecturer with the University of Cape Coast Business School, and thanks for joining us. And you're also a financial analyst, I believe. Thanks for joining me, sir.
Hello.
Okay, good morning, sir. Now, particularly, the finance minister is expected to be in Parliament. Well, it doesn't matter how it's tagged, whether it's a briefing as being tagged by the majority or the minority saying it's now just a relook at the current budget. Do you think, following the discussions and conclusions with the IMF, the best means by which we can adequately go according to the conditions as we've agreed with the monetary fund is to present a new budget before Parliament?
can repeat the last piece of the distance. There is too much noise in the line.
Okay, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, you have to raise your voice.
Okay, I'm asking you, do you think that we can only do better as an economy or a country, or manage the economy adequately, only by coming back to Parliament and presenting a new budget, just because we have agreed certain conditions with the IMF?
Are you asking whether we can only do better by going back to Parliament?
Yes, for a new budget.
Is that what you're asking?
Sure.
Yeah, I think so, because economic management is not divorced from the rules and the laws of the country. For example, issues of IMF program will have to be discussed with Parliament. We are losing about $700 million from petroleum proceeds. We are expecting about $940 million from the IMF. You can't just leave that in the hands of the finance minister. You need to go to Parliament, give specific explanation, the influence on the budget, projects that you are prioritizing, how you are going to cut expenditure. You need to have that Parliament present for approval for execution. So, very, very key as part of economic management processes to engage in this exercise. More so, while you are losing about $700 million petroleum proceeds, expecting $940 million from IMF. That $940 million, we need to know how it's going to be disbursed. Is it all the $940 million that will be disbursed in 1 year? Because the program is supposed to be for 3 years. How much of that will be disbursed in the first year? And how that will have effect on the execution of the budget. So for me, it is very crucial that the finance minister get to Parliament and indicate all these things. More so, he has also gotten in his bag discussion on a $1 billion issue. He must also go to Parliament to indicate that, seek approval. In addition to that, because our debt levels are high, he must convince the nation through Parliament whether that will be accommodated in the debt management process of the country. It is very clear. And then more so, because the IMF program is program specific, how those programs is going to change the face of the strategy that the business community has already adopted for execution in the year. So you need to do all these things to provide a very clear situation for those who are going to realign their strategies, etc. Those who want to invest in the economy, is it going to change the area of interest for them? So it's very important for all of us to have this done today.
At the heart of the discussions the last couple of months, since we got the wind that, well, government was going to the IMF, has been how the discussions and the conclusions could put a check on government spending. Now, we're hoping that this year we could hover around the 6% mark as far as the deficit is concerned. Will this be the only panacea or perhaps solution to enabling us keep our finances in check by way of expenditure? We seem to have lost it. All right.
So he's confirming what I'm saying, that the elements of the message today from the finance minister will be on the fiscal management of the economy. And we know that we have to cut back on expenditure. And cutting back of expenditure means removal of subsidies on utilities. There are still some subsidies left on water and electricity, which is going to be very painful for the people of this country because we don't have the electricity to start with. And to increase the price in the midst of such severe shortage is going to make matters worse for the livelihood of the people of this country. And we have to be honest enough to admit these things and to see how best we ameliorate the situation.
One of the things that have been attributed to perhaps where we are today is because government has not been spending. Well, if government has been spending, has not been spending rightly.
Government has been overspending. That is the source of our problem.
Yes, has not been spending in the...
We know that.
Go.
And then all our problems are coming from that. We know that. They spent over 4 billion trying to buy the elections of 2012. That's a source. I mean, we have to be honest with ourselves.
That's
that
an
the presidency comes to parliament with 84 million Ghana cedis as a budget approved by appropriation, and it ends up on 600 million.
We have Dr. John Gachi, the chartered economist, back on the line. Sir, do we only need to go to the IMF to keep our finances in check by way of expenditure and always make sure we hover around the 6% mark as far as the deficit is concerned, as we have projected for this year?
Well, I don't know whether you are asking the proper question, because we have crossed that line. The country has gone to IMF. A program is almost at hand. I think the important thing is whether that program is indeed going to help the country or not. I think that is what we should be focusing on now as a nation. The details of the program, are they going to help take us away from the problems we are facing? Will the problem help our deficit to come down? Are we going to reduce inflation? Are we going to cater for the vulnerable in society through proper social intervention programs to this? Are we going to clear arrears to give the business people
But it means that programs will suffer, social intervention programs, and he has made that. Already we have a debt stock of some 67.1% and increasing, so to speak. It means that we have to cut back. But cutting back also means that, well, we also have to free up where already we're already spending, the subsidies, etc. A lot more of those at the lower end of our economic structure are going to suffer.
Yeah, I don't know. First of all, to make an assumption that this is what the president is coming to say.
You mean the finance minister?
The finance minister is coming to say. No, he made some assumptions and said that he's going to cut subsidies. Electricity is part of it. Look at how we are suffering, and he's going to still cut. And then he made a conclusion, which is wrong. You don't know what the man is coming to say yet. It is true that he's coming to address physical challenges. I do agree with you. The details would be heard at the Parliament House. So let's hear the details before we make those conclusions. But I know that definitely they are going to be, he's going to cut a lot of spending. He's going to cut spending. There will be he will realign some taxes, and that will create a situation where we can relieve ourselves of the burden of huge expenditure, the kinds of expenditure we'll be making this year. Much of it will be transferred to next year, so that we can have breathing space now to manage the economy and be able to stabilize the fundamentals. So I know that what is going to happen will be of benefit to everybody, and it's going to be bitter, but it is because we have to take those steps. And I will call on all patriotic Ghanaians to see this as a very forward-looking attempt. As
a national call.
As a national call.
To duty.
A forward-looking attempt to address the challenges which we are all facing.
So
remember that this thing is a flow over of every country in the West that is our role model. They suffered it. You know, we thought that we're insulated, we're cushioning ourselves away from it because of certain decisions we've taken. It's come to a point where we now have to face the music, and I will think that it must be a committed attempt to do it in ways that will not create disaffection by some other people thinking that once the government is making attempts to do it, the government is deliberately imposing hardship on the people.
It's good that you mentioned disaffection. Are you also not playing on the disaffection that perhaps is being translated as a result of what we're feeling economically by Ghanaians into the mindset psychologically?
I am a realist.
You're a realist.
I represent
no politics out of it?
I represent the people of Kwadaso. And my hand is there on the button. Because people come to me. They write to me, they call me, they come to my house, they come to my office. And I know the suffering of the people. And I cannot sit here and pretend that the people of Kwadaso are happy, that they are not undergoing any major shifts in their standard of living and all that. It's not possible.
Well, Ghanaians are also really in the same condition.
Yeah, no, at least I'm talking about my constituency, which I represent in Parliament. Okay? That is the reality on the ground. And if you call that politics, fair enough.
Now, with the jobs that are being lost, do we project that a lot more of the companies could also be?
Things are going to get worse, as I said. First of all, you know what is happening in the cocoa industry?
I don't know.
Well, there's going to be a huge shortfall in cocoa production in this country and export in this country. Anybody who has...
You mean by the end of the year we should expect that?
No, it's happening now.
Why?
Our shipments out of this country, volumes are reducing compared to the previous 2-3 years because of bad policies in the cocoa sector.
There's mass cocoa spraying exercises ongoing?
Mass spraying, that's what you said. Mass spraying was instituted by Kufuor in 2002.
Sure, we know that.
And at the time that cocoa production was only 350,000 metric tons. Within 3 years, it had doubled to 765,000 metric tons. They expanded the program and projected in the next 5 years to be 1 million metric tons, which it was, although he wasn't there. Okay, since then, what have we seen? We've seen just a drop, steady drop in production and export. And this is the activity which maintains the people of this country. You know that we went and borrowed $1.7 billion against our cocoa shipments, and that helped to stabilize the fall in the CD and all that. Now I'm even wondering whether we'll be able to pay back the $1.7 billion.
Why can't we?
Because of the shortfalls in shipments.
Okay, let me ask you.
There are a lot of...
As a member of parliament,
this country is in very deep economic crisis.
As a member of parliament representing, and you say the people of Kwadaso.
Yes.
And
not that I say, I do represent the people of Kwadaso.
You do represent the people of Kwadaso.
Thank you.
And with the way you talk, with the way you see gloom, do you think you paint a positive picture of perhaps perseverance and people in a country who need to perhaps stand up and embrace what we're facing and rise up and do well?
What rise up? The management of this economy is in the hand of the executive. That's our constitutional arrangement. And the executive is not doing the right thing. They've led us into this situation. So what do you expect the ordinary people in Kwadaso to do? Yeah, they are just
by your actions. He says by your actions, you are translating doom and despair and despondency among the population.
That's what they should say.
The population has no alternative.
It's always their storyline. Just remember that their expectation is that we'll lose power and they can come into power. They had it for 8 years. They didn't produce any magic. They said they had the men, and we didn't see anything. They didn't do anything that they think that we should have been doing now. I mean, I think that the people of Ghana should be discerning enough to know that the challenges we are facing are medium-term, short-term challenges, and in the medium term, we'll overcome them and be okay.
How do they come
before 2016, doom so will be over, I believe, very strongly, and that we would present to the people of Ghana our achievements. We are not telling our story enough. That's why there's so much space for them to say all the things they are saying. I think that within the last 2 years, what we have done, if we compare what this administration has delivered, pick any other administration apart from maybe the Nkrumah administration, you would not see the achievements in terms of putting in place needed infrastructure. You wouldn't find that comparison. But we are not telling that story. Look at the state of the nation, what the president presented, the projects we did within the last 2 years. And compared to any other 2 years. So I'm saying that we are not telling the story enough, but we have to stabilize the economy, get the power situation done for us to be able, for Ghanaians to see exactly what we have done with their economy. We are definitely not playing with the economy. They are playing politics with it. We are focused. We are determined.
You are in charge of private sector, PPPs, etc.
Yes.
Now, a lot of capital is needed, whether inflows or outflows or whatever it is, that need to be had at hand for investment. With the way the economy is, those at the lower end will be the sufferers, and ultimately, once they also tend to give adequate indication of what the inflationary trends could be. At the end of the fiscal year, we may not be doing too well as an economy.
I already admit the challenges we are facing. I already admit that businesses are suffering in the short term, and that it's all going to translate into the overall fiscal achievements of government, because taxes and etc. will be low. If people are not working, in production is not increasing, definitely you are not going to get enough revenue into the economy. Lots of things are happening. But I do admit also that because of the short-term challenges we are facing, we would need to take some key measures, very key measures, stringent measures to instigate the economy to work faster, to move faster, and to respond to all these challenges. And the appeal now is that we need to understand the situation we are in. If we don't understand, you would destroy what we have without making any headway at all. If you continue listening to what the opposition is saying, the minority is saying.
You mean they are not telling the truth to Ghanaians?
They are more interested in telling a story that will keep people despondent and angry and vote, and so they can get their votes from there. But we are interested in telling a real story of an economy that is being addressed, the challenges of an economy that is being addressed.
So you are the realists, and they are...
I don't know. He says that he's a realist.
All right.
There's one thing that I agree with.
For me, I have to.
Yes.
I give you 30 seconds.
There's one thing that I agree with the minister for the first time in this discussion. That revenue, there's a shortfall in revenue. If you look at the budget for the 5 months, we have four months from there, the projections of the revenues that we were expecting, and you go to the accountant generals to find out exactly how much revenues are coming in. There's a shortfall, even in the 4 or 5 months since the budget was read. So if you are to keep a balance between your deficit, to reduce your deficit, you need to cut back on your expenditure. And cutting back on expenditure, where are you going to cut? This is a heavily taxed economy.
Well, thank you very much. And thanks for joining me, Rashid Pelpo, Member of Parliament for Wa Central, and Minister of State at the Presidency in charge of private sector, or the PPPs as we call them, and also Member of Parliament for Kwadaso. And thanks for joining me, Dr. Afriyie Akoto.
He's on a
thanks.
war path.
Okay. And Rashid Pelpo said he's on a war path. Thanks for joining us this morning. Same time tomorrow, we'll be joining you.